So today's video is going to be how we're going to get these two parts together. There's many different ways to do this. I will show you what I do. You can start with the floor. I don't necessarily like to start with the floor. I used to, but it's a pain to get a cage in. So with cage material, you can use styrene strips like I'm gonna use. I get evergreen just because that's usually what my hobby shop has. There's multiple different brands. There's people who prefer one or the other, but overall I use evergreen. You can use like out of model kits. Let's see if I have anything on hand. So, for example, I wouldn't use this piece necessarily, but this is a sway bar from something. But parts trees for models, I used to use that all the time. But now that I'm getting a little better at this stuff, I have strips around for doing actual models too. So, usually I'll go with styrene. Most of the time I'll use like every millimeter in 1/25th scale is roughly an inch. So 1/24th, it's a little bigger. So when you get into higher, like bigger parts, it starts becoming a bigger issue. But for the most part, just think of every millimeter as an inch. So 3.2 millimeters. So that would roughly be 3x3 tubing, that's what we use in real life a lot of the time. 4x4 is a little heavy. I also got some 2x3. I normally like some. I wanted 2x4. They didn't have any. 2x2 they didn't have, so I might have some laying around that I might build with, but I don't have any in the packaging. So you can do the floor, but I want this as close as possible to, well, how wide it should be roughly. Now this body is warped and not perfect, but I did make this piece that goes on the body. As you can see, it almost follows the body line pretty much almost perfectly. And this side does too. But the bottom where it's going to sit, like, it doesn't move back and forth much, if at all. I will put that on here. So I'll have a rough idea where it's supposed to go. And then I have two of them, so I can do front and back. So what I'm going to do is just put a little dab of glue on here, and then put it on. So it'll sit somewhat like that. Well, actually probably more like that. And then I'll do it right about here and probably back by mid door. And I'll show you what to do after that. So now that I got one side, I got this big 1-inch steel plate. Came off some tubing we had. I use this because this is the flattest surface I have. As you can see, it's not perfect, obviously. But I put some WD-40 on it, wiped it down, and so I have a surface where hot glue isn't going to really stick, and it's not really oily anymore because, well, over time the oiliness just kind of goes away. So, yeah, from here you're going to want to kind of do the same thing, but as you can see, the body's staying up. That's pretty close. And then we're just going to put little dabs of glue. And this is what really, not makes it hard, makes it more difficult because you got to try to line it up from back and forth. It always bothers me when a car's skewed out like this way. It's not bad if it's like a little bit, but it bothers me enough to where I'd rather spend a little bit more time here fiddling around with it. So that's what I'll do now. So we kind of got it where we need it. As you can see, it's not perfectly level or anything yet, but what I normally like to do at this point is put that on, kind of, not glue it on, but just put it on to make sure it's kind of in its right spot-ish. And as you can see, it's not too bad. From here, you might have to bend your pillars in a little bit or whatever. It's a little skinnier on this jig because this jig's a little big actually, because that body is warped in it. This body right here is warped, back here is thinner than up here. So I kind of evened it out. So that jig is more right than in this one because that one's kind of what's in the center. So I went off that one, put a little space in this front one, and it looks to be pretty even. If you're really picky, like super duper picky, kind of like me, you can kind of measure across the bottom and then measure your body for reference and whatnot. But from here, I'm going to start constructing my cage. So I'm going to measure, now depending if you have these, it's going to be really easy or not. I'm going to measure from outside to outside. Now, that's going to all depend on your car, so I can't give you like an actual measurement it should be. But basically, you want to go from there, that skin to that skin, so it'll stay where it should anyway. I'd also like to add at this point that depending on where your door bar is going to be, some people put them right to the firewall, and some people's dash bars go to the firewall. But depending on how thick your cage material is you're going to want to take that away from your measurement from door to door, just so you don't waste as much material down the road. Like you might think, oh, just a little bit here and there, not a big deal, which it really isn't. But, you know, over time, or that little piece could be used for something. But like this car, I'm not going to use this as a door bar. I'm probably going to use a 3x3, maybe 2 3x3s glued together, so it's like a 3x6. Because I know some people do that for door bars. This is kind of like a Blizzard Bash style build kind of thing, so bigger door bars is not unheard of, like taller. So whatever, take that measurement and then subtract your door bars. That's basically all I'm saying. So I have noticed some things with this body is roughly out 1/2 centimeter, so 5 millimeters. So yeah, because as you can see, they're not this the way the door is bent because of this body line. It came in, as you can see. So depending on how high your cage is going to be, I can just bend it all down here. But you may have to adjust, and your cage might not be perfectly square. So just do that. Just keep that in mind. So once you got your measurements, you're going to want to see how far back you want your door bar to be, and then you'll do your seat bar between that. And you'll put a basic 4-point in there. Basically, I put my 4-point down legs and all the gussets for it in there. And the tank protector gets added after that because you don't know exactly where the floor is going to go. Now, you can have a rough idea, or if you don't really care if it's a little short, you can kind of guesstimate. But I don't do tank protectors until I have my floor done. So cage is next thing, and then floor, and then tank protector. So now that we got the 4-point going on, you're going to want to put it in there. Now you got to figure out height, roughly. This is the seat bar. Normally, I like the bars actually go a little further on the back than the front, but I wanted it close to the firewall, also just to position the cage in there. Just a little easier. You don't have to put gussets if it's constructed like this, really. On the back you would, because there's a seam right there and the tank protector would push it forward. But the way my rollover bar or halo bar, whatever you want to call it, it's going to sit in there. I'm not using this piece, but for example, it's going to sit in here like that, glued to the floor, glued to the roof. So that's going to work as its own gusset. I might add a gusset in there. Now these cages don't look amazing because they're made with hot glue, but it's better than model glue. I know model glue bonds stuff together, but hot glue has some give to it. While with model glue, a lot of times these will snap out and whatever. So for now, you're going to want to set it in there to mock up, which don't break anything. So you can see it kind of fits in there. There's a little bit of wiggle room, but that's because the back had a big gap and then the front didn't, so I have to line that up. But, whoops, that's actually the wrong way. But from here, you're going to measure out your height, and then if you want down legs, you can do the math to do that, obviously. Normally, I'll check it on one side, kind of see where I like it. And then I will mark it on the other side. So let's say something like, I like cages pretty low. So let's say something like that. I'll measure out that line and we'll go from there. Now from here, I'll add, if your cage kind of lines up, like touches the firewall, you can break it off the bottom. Now, if it doesn't touch the firewall, I suggest leaving it on while you glue this together, which makes it a little bit more difficult. But since it touches the firewall right at the front there, I'm gonna just glue it in on one side, measure it, and do it to the other. So there it is, cage is in. It's not pretty. From the top side, it looks decent. And that's kind of how these cars are, is you just want them to look decent from the outside. And underneath, not so nice. You got a bead of glue there. Bead of glue on that side. A lot of glue holding in these in the bottom. But from the top side, it looks pretty good. And that's all that really matters for this. So yeah, now you got something you can kind of work with. It's a little unstable. The bottom is a little out of measurement, which you can kind of tweak it a little bit, but not like too much. So yeah, there you have it. The next step will be the floor, and that'll be in a whole nother video because this one's already going on 13 minutes. But see you guys in the next video.